the thing I want people to understand that I have learned is you cannot be connected today on yesterday's spirituality. You must recharge it. It's like your cell phone. It's got a battery. The things that I've come to believe that are like universal for anybody, and this has been my journey, is like, first of all, you need a clean house, because if your antenna is like fucked up, you can't receive and be like connected to the frequency that is like source energy, God, universe, whatever you want to call it. Then it's like you need to learn to trust God. We don't have to sit here and talk about like what God is or what God is not, because that's not important. All you need to know is it's not you. Then the third component of this is like helping others.
I have found, and I think a lot of people, like when you're saying, you know, how can I give to other people when I've got all this stuff in my mind? Like, I totally get that. And what I've learned is that's the moment when I need to go into service, and I need to get curious 100%. About other people, because source, God, whatever, does work through other people. I think a lot of times we spend so much time spinning, right? And it's like, that's actually when you do need to go in the other direction. And that for me has changed my life and given me so much clarity. And it keeps the energy flowing, and it keeps me in alignment with receiving, right? Like it helps God keep giving to me. How are you feeling?
Feeling great.
You excited?
Very excited.
I'm very excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here. I was so honored and kind of frankly surprised, but I felt like...
Why were you surprised?
You know, because I felt like am I don't know if worthy is the right word, but am I worthy, or am I entertaining enough, or do I have enough to be with the great CTC on her podcast?
Of course, we're basically the same person. We have the same human design chart.
I know, that's true. That's true. And I didn't know. And then you told me about that. And I was like, oh, it makes so much sense. And I always tell people that. I'm like a well. If you want information from me,
so
I'm
you got a
full
lot
of it.
from that.
Yeah. Quad right, baby.
Yeah,
Let's
there
go.
You go. Quad right. Yeah, it's weird. I've never met anybody with that similar of a chart.
Really?
Which, like, obviously when I met you, like, we vibe, but I didn't necessarily... There's certain people I think we have to have the same chart. Like, I meet them and we're so similar, but I didn't necessarily think that about you.
You know what's funny is the first time I had you even on my radar was when we went to Lowe's event, and you were on stage, and I was kind of like, oh, this is just some like white woo-woo chick, like I don't know, like
another one
hustling or peddling this whatever, and I was just kind of like spaced out. But I paid attention to you because you were talking about your journey with your health stuff and then getting through that. And you know, my girlfriend I shared with you has some like mystery health issues, and so I really like paid attention and was moved by your story. And I didn't get a chance to meet you. You were, I think, the only person on stage that I didn't really get to meet and afterwards. And you were the one I wanted to meet the most. And then I got a call from this mystery man. And I'm like, wait, like, how do you know? He's like, oh, my daughter, Christina Rice, knows you. And I was like, who's Christina Rice? And I Googled you, and I was like, oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was so excited to just get to meet you, like in my own self-interest. Like, man, I really wanted to meet you. And then upon meeting you, I think whenever I have a first like judgment of someone, I'm like, it's like, we're going to be so similar.
Yeah.
It's just how it goes.
Usually.
And I was so impressed by you.
Thank you.
And I continue to be so impressed by you. And I think getting to know you in kind of your circle, everyone that knows you is just like, oh, she's amazing. And at first it's kind of like, until you really get to experience you like really like closely, you don't really see it because you're pretty protective with your energy is the way I would describe it. Maybe that's a misjudgment, but that's the way I see it.
Interesting, yeah.
But yeah, you're incredible.
Thank you. It's funny you say that because that's been on my mind a lot recently. Like, I had that reflected to me from someone who doesn't know me, just reading my energy, saying like that I'm closed off, and I don't perceive myself that way at all. But like, maybe that's what's going on. Like, do you feel like that? Like I have a protective bubble up?
You know, I think kind of like you are someone who is, you could say, I think most humans would say she's protective of her time.
Yeah.
But because,
I mean, I'm a shark.
But because you and I see things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
It's like it's not really about time. It's about energy.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that is a fair characterization, but I can't say definitively.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely am protective with my inner circle. Like
Yes.
I'm very protective with my inner circle. People tend to get really kind of grabby with me. They've been like that my whole life. And so I definitely started to put up walls in that area, you know, but with you, the first time, I don't know why Lo had brought up your name, but the second I heard your name, I got full body like, oh, I know him. And I told Lo immediately, I go, oh, I think he's Soul Fam. Like, I'm supposed to meet him. And I didn't know anything about you. And then a couple months later, I think I knew you were coming to the event, but I don't think I saw you there. Like, I knew your name and I knew we were going to connect, and I like knew you were going to be important. And at the time I didn't know I was going to sell my house, you know, and then the house stuff happened. And, yeah, it was just, there were a couple other people I knew in the area who are realtors, and I was just like, yeah, it's him, you know? So Big Jim gave you a call.
Big Jim, by the way, shout out Big Jim. I love Big Jim. And,
Me too.
But the thing was, like, I don't know if I've ever told you this, and I might have alluded to it, but like in 2023, like I was going through a really hard time.
Yeah.
Like I had a lot of big changes. I had a breakup that just like gutted me. I was like just going through it, and I was making a lot of changes and getting realigned, and I was very like, I'm like you, I'm driven, I'm very go, and my business was like my number one priority. And I realized in 2023, after doing a lot of work and just doing a lot of soul searching and work on myself and work with others, and just that work shouldn't be the number one thing. It can be important, but it shouldn't be like the top priority. Right. Like, and as silly as that sounds, like it sounds silly for me to say it now, but that's just not how I was living.
Yeah.
Right. And
I mean, I think a lot of people, especially in this area, don't live that way.
Yeah.
To be honest. Well,
I think
depending
it's like
on the circle.
East Coast people, I feel like I meet more of them are like that.
Yeah, that's true.
But, you know, my family's, my mom's side's East Coast, you know, so maybe I get it from them. I don't know. But one of the things was like, what I didn't tell you was like, at the time I was not putting such an emphasis on just being go with work. And I was really trusting like God, universe to provide, and that if I was just going to do the right stuff, like it was going to happen. And I had no sight of like how my next thing, because usually I'm like, you know, like churning and running and gunning and generating business, and I wasn't. And you came into my life. Lo came into my life, and you came into my life like guardian angels. You came in like angels. You came in at a time where I was low, and and when I was low, LOW.
Yeah.
And then I went to low, LO cement, and that was the first time that I felt kind of like, I don't know how to say it other than like okay.
Yeah.
In a while. And then I was, you know, not to be like it, but I do pretty well in business.
Yeah.
But 2023, it was a down market, and I'm going through all this personal stuff. And so when you came through, you were like a savior in that moment for me, because I really needed that at that moment, like to have that business and have that confidence boost. And then you showed me so much like just grace as a person, and you were so kind to me. And then the work and energy work that you did with me got me again through like another breakthrough and level. And you've just been like a continued, like, just, you're one of my favorite people. Your energy is amazing, and you've just shown me nothing but like love and kindness and compassion. It's no wonder why people just want to be around you. Like, I'm sorry that people are always like, hey, like, and it's hard because it is like, you're like the kind of person that like, I know for me, like, I just want more. Like when I'm like, oh, it's like Christina, but I know I don't want to abuse like the privilege of my friend. No, and I try. Well, thank you, because I don't want to, because I respect you a lot. Yeah. But I can see how, if people aren't considering that, or if they're in there like, hey, I see you as a source, because you've been able, I'm sure you've helped me. And some people I've met, like, shout out Jackie, awesome, love her. She just said how much you've helped her with coaching and stuff like that. And yeah, there's just so many people around that hold you in such high regard. And at first I was like, why? And then I was like, okay, I'm a believer. I get it now.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I think for me, like, I care so much about people. Like when when someone's in my inner circle, or even like, you know, often in my, whether it's a friend or a client, like when you're in my inner circle, like I care so much. Like I will go above and beyond, bend over backwards. Like I'm a hardcore lover, you know? And so I have had to really refine my circle of who else can do that for me, you know? And it's funny because during that time, you know, when we connected and you were, you know, putting my house on the market and going through that whole process, like that was such, as you know, an emotional process for me. And totally. I don't know that you even know, like for me personally, the extent of everything that was, and we did it really fast, you know, and it was very emotionally tumultuous for me. And I needed I was like, I just need to be held in this. Like I need someone to just handle it, you know? And I was kind of going through this thing in my life where I was realizing all these places where people I wanted to depend on, like, just weren't showing up for me. And I was just telling the universe, like, I need to just be held in this. Like, I need someone else to handle it for me for once, because I often, you know, and that this is stuff I create, right? But I create this belief that if I don't do it, like, it's not going to happen.
Oh, I got that.
Yeah.
From
you know, and I'm already like, you know, high stress, and I'm like, you know, so it was a lot to go through. And I think, like, you know, what you do, and we talked about this, is so powerful. It reminds me of, I've talked to some of my friends who are stylists, you know, it's a similar thing. I'm like, the things that you walk people through, like the life stages, the transitions, the reinvention, the identity shift, like, you know, with your home, you're leaving behind so many memories and that iteration of yourself. And, you know, depending on where you're moving, like there's just so much emotionally that you're going through at that time. It's not just selling a house, you know, it's a death. It's releasing a whole identity, you know, and like the energy that you hold is so important. And I needed that. And that was, you know, that when we talked that first day, when you came to, like, you know, do a walkthrough of my house, you know, I was just wanted to know how you showed up, you know, and like you showed up with that energy, like he's in his masculine, he can handle this, he knows what he's doing, he's going to make it easy for me. And like, that's really what I needed to get through it, you know? So like, I think, you know, I point that out for so many reasons, but in life, when we're, you know, manifesting something and someone comes in, you know, like the way I came into your life, but you came into my life, like we were meeting each other exactly at that same vibration of what we needed.
Because there's that give and take.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important. And that's why today, like I felt, and there was like a mentor of mine, I've like mentioned a lot to you, this dude Thatch, like the dude's a multimillionaire many times over. Right. Yeah. But when we go to lunch, I said, hey, let me pick up the tab because I appreciate his time so much. And he said to me, and like, it was such a profound lesson in something so simple. And he's like, I'm going to let you pay because like I have to be able to receive in order to give. And he gives a lot. Yeah. And that for me was like, wow. And that's why I was like, hey, let me, as silly as it might seem, let me cover your lunch. Cause you're like, yes, I will receive. Right. And so, and I've learned that lesson in my own life. I mean, I had a friend, he has a truck, and when I bought my house, I was like, hey, can you help me move this stuff? Like a client gave me her barbecue and her ladder. Yeah. And I was like, hey, can you help me like pick this stuff up? And he's like, yeah, no problem. I was like, let me Venmo you. Cause like and he's like one of my best friends, and he's like, dude, don't worry. And I'm like, no. And I realized like, I don't let people give to me. And then I allow myself to be mad because no one ever gives to me. Yeah. And I never feel like I'm receiving. So then I feel like I'm this good guy, but then I feel like in these moments, then I just take. Yeah. And then it's like, but then I'm kind of stepping on someone else's toes because I'm so energetically off balance. And I feel like you have a really good balance with the give and the take. And I appreciate you saying all the kind things about me and working with you and working together. And I feel like we're a good team because for you have such a strong personality. And and I feel like I have a very strong personality too. And sometimes with potential clients or clients, it's a little too much. They're like, they want to be a little more babied. But with you, it was like, I feel like looking back, I should have been more strong and been like, Christina, this is how we're going to do this. Yeah. Rather than trying to be like, let me try to make you happy or do this. Cause you're like, I just want it done. Yeah. And I'm like, that's where I thrive. I'm like, good, get out of the way and let me do it. You know? Yeah.
Well, I mean, there were definitely multiple times in that process. I like messaged you and I was like, pull this shit together. Do not involve me. Like,
yeah, I know. And then I'm like, well, you kind of have to be involved a little bit. Like I need to sign some stuff and sign off.
I know.
But I was like, you know, looking back, I should have been like, here, you're going to go stay in this house, get the out of my way, and we're going to do this. Can we cuss on here?
Yeah, 100%.
Sorry.
You totally can. You can say whatever you want. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, what you said about the giving and receiving balance. I mean, I've had to work on that a lot, you know, and like my job is taking care of people, you know, and for me, the other layer is, you know, I'm a very generous person and I like to be a generous person. And sometimes people take advantage of that, you know, and when like with picking up the bill, like, to be honest, I mean, you know, I'm financially successful. People are used to me picking up the bill. Like, people just are. And I started to realize that, like, people, just expect Christina to, because I do, you know, I spend money on nice gifts for people, you know, I do. And I don't ever stress about that. But then when I feel like people start to like expect it, you know, or like kind of take advantage of it, that's when I start to feel resentful.
Yeah, because it doesn't hold the energy of a gift anymore.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
A gift, for me, like, and I think like giving a gift is more like, it's one of those things that I've been like really tripping off of paradoxes lately, and how there's so many profound truths that are paradoxical. And right, like, so one being like, giving a gift is more for the person that gives than the person that receives, right? That's who really gets the gift. So it's like, even in this, in the interest of being of service to someone else or of contribution to someone else, it's really more beneficial for yourself, right? And that's what I mean about like the paradox of, right? Like, so anyways, like, but yeah, it sours it if someone expects it and doesn't have, because it's like, it's that give and take. It's like, you give the gift, they have to receive the gift. And if someone expects it, they're not really, you know what I mean? There's not that reciprocation.
Well, and
it's
to your point, like,
different.
I know sometimes people get uncomfortable with my giving. Like, I know that. And I don't mind, because I'm like, this is for me. Like, I like to shower people with, like, you know, it's one of my love languages. Like, I like to give to people, take care of people.
It's
you know?
fun.
Yeah. It makes me feel good, you know?
Yeah,
so,
me too.
And that's one of the things, like, again, when I'm looking at like the level of service that I receive, like, I want that to match what I give. Like, I know I go above and beyond for people I work with, you know? So, and I wanted to receive that as well. And kind of to bring it back full circle, you know? So like, you were one of the first people I thought of when we were going through this whole rebrand, with the podcast. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, like, you know, I built this podcast on interviewing, and that's why I fell in love with podcasting. And then in the last few years, with so much changing, I just kind of was tired of having conversations and that whole side of things. And in the last year, I realized like I really miss those conversations. You know, that's why I got into this. That's why I love it. And I felt like when we went spiritual with the business fully, you know, suddenly I felt almost like pigeonholed. Like, I have to talk about this, but I don't always want to talk about that. And at the end of the day, like, everything is energy, and life is a spiritual experience. You know, it doesn't have to. And I can feel the energy of people like expecting us to be talking about past life regression and, you know, I don't know, your Akashic record. And I love talking about that, but like, why I love spirituality is because it makes everything make sense, like in actual life, you know, and I'm more interested in application. Like, I got into energy because I want to be more efficient. I want to optimize. I want to make a lot of money, you know, like, so all of that. But like, you know, the whole concept behind multidimensional is that like, we are multidimensional. Yes. Like, we're a soul in this body and many other bodies, different incarnations, but like, you as a person are so multidimensional, and like, what's the real story and what are the different facets of you, you know? And I think depending on how someone meets me, sometimes, you know, I think I'm a little strange for people to figure out, because if they meet me in a business context, like at a networking business event, they would not think I'm the woo-woo psychic person that I am, you know?
Yeah. And you know, it's funny that you say that. A lot of people that I meet that are like very, very successful in business are that way.
Yeah.
When you actually get to know
100%.
them. Because I think what people realize is, when you make a lot of money and you have a lot of success, it's not what you thought it was going to be. And I have a mentor named Brian Kane, who is very wise, and I attribute to a lot of success I had. He's an awesome guy, great real estate agent. And he told me like this year, I was like, hey, I want to double my business. And he was coaching me, and he's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, bro. Like, I'm sure. Like, he's like, why? I was like, money, duh. Like, and he's like, But are you sure? Do you know what comes with going from where you're at to there?
Yeah.
Do you know what the changes are going to be? And are you sure you want that?
Yeah.
And I think if I knew, I might not have said yes.
Really?
No,
because
actually,
what came with it?
Well, no, I mean, I would have, but what came with it was like no time for social things. I remember being at my friend's baby shower. I'm not present. I'm like running off in the corner and taking phone calls the whole time, constantly texting, not going on vacations, going on a vacation to Rhode Island with my family. And we're going to go to the beach, you know, and I've got my whole family there. And I grew up going there like every summer. And like supposed to go out, and I'm like, let me just like finish this one thing on the computer. And I'm in the like dining room table of our family house, and starting at like, you know, 10 a.m., which on the East Coast is like 7 a.m. West Coast, and staying there for like 8 hours just doing work on the phone and computer the whole time, and like not going to the beach, not doing shit. Like, you know what I mean? Just being totally consumed. And I felt like I had to do that because at the time, like the way the market was is so crazy, and people are trusting me to help them buy or sell a home, and either help them like get the highest and best price and best terms, right? And take the stress off of them. Or like on the flip side, what really took a lot of the energy and most of the energy is the buyers, because it was so competitive. I'm competitive, right?
No.
In that masculine. No. I'm more competitive than you. Trust me.
No.
See, we're competing right now. That was the joke.
Yeah.
See, you got a
We're
good
too
sense
similar.
of humor. Yeah, I know, right? But that's why like I love what you said about homes, because it is an energy. And the thing is too is like my clients, and they don't have to be like woo woo and this that, but people who pay attention, when you go into a home, you can feel the energy.
Yeah.
You know. And the thing is, when you go in a home with good energy, I've never had it, not a single time, be like a nightmare seller and like this. But you go into one that's funky, and it is. The ones that have good energy, it's always smooth. The ones that don't, aren't. Or like I try to not have clients, not based on that. If they want to do it, I'll help them, right? But a lot of times they can feel it too.
Yeah.
And I tend to work with people that can at least pick up on some of those subtleties. But it is like moving, whether you're renting and buying for the first time, or you're like selling and then going somewhere else. It is like a death and a rebirth. And that's why, like, for my business, like I chose the logo of the Roman god Janus. He was the god of beginnings, endings, transitions, and doorways. Right. And so it's like we look at ourselves, and it's a perfect logo and kind of mascot, because we look at ourselves as the people who are there for you through that transition, helping you through the transition from renter to buyer, from selling your home to your next home. And we want to be there to help facilitate that process, help protect your energy, help get you there, and then help not only do that, just be someone you know, you like, and you trust to do the right thing on your behalf. And so when I'm doing the best in my business, I'm living authentically, I'm real with my clients, and I'm coming from contribution 100%. It is all about them. I don't think about myself. Sometimes we drift into that, and you have to kind of like, with the give and take, be like, okay, like, is this going to be worth my time? Not because of me, but because it's going to be unfair to my other clients if I take this low of a price, or if I do this favor, or if I take on this energy commitment, energy drain from this person. Like, I'm not going to show up my best for my other clients. So there are like things that we have to consider for ourselves, but like putting the client first, and putting that, and not just like saying that, because everyone says that, like, we put our clients first. Bullshit.
Yeah.
I talked to someone the other day, and they're asking me all these questions, and they're asking me like, hey, like, you know, you do all these things, like, you know, we like hire like a taco lady, and we do all this like big things for open houses, and they're like, well, you do all this stuff, and like, is it worth it? And I'm like, look, and they thought I was going to talk to them about like the strategy for the open house. I'm like, you're going about this completely fucking wrong. First of all.
Yeah.
Like, how much are you getting paid on this? It was like a over $2 million thing. I'm like, you're making a lot of money on this thing. You've sold yourself on like getting this, and you're worried about yourself.
Yeah.
It's like, you should be just doing the best job that you can do. And I'm not trying to say this as a high and mighty. I'm saying this because I've learned this, and I live it, and I see so many people not doing it. If you want to do well, whether it's real estate or another business, and I know you know this because you're such a giver, and you're so generous, and you're so, you put so much love and attention to it. It's like, you have to put the other person first. You have to come from contribution and think only of the value that you're going to bring to them, and hold the energy of like, how can I have some clients, like, not a lot, but a few over the years, none currently. Don't worry, you're all safe. But some in years past where like they're energetically chaotic and they have these things, but I hold them in like an unconditional positive regard. There's my psych stuff showing up. But it's like looking at them like almost as if they can do no wrong because I have to be on their team and I can't let my judgment and interpretation of their behavior and thoughts get in the way. I have to figure out and be curious and seek to understand them and be like, okay, why are they being like that? Because in my mind, I might be like, yeah, she's being a bitch. But what it really is like, oh, they're afraid or this. And I had this client one time who I think she's amazing. I really, really like her. She came referred from a very good friend. She was so cool, and she was about to like blow up this deal for like almost no money. Like it was like over like $5,000, and it was like it was at a time where there's a lull in the market. Like it would have been a huge bad move from a financial standpoint to not go through with this. And she was really smart. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you? And like, luckily, I've had, experience in like this kind of stuff and great mentors. And so I go, okay, like, let me find out like where she's coming from. And so I like take a couple deep breaths and I go, hey, tell me about like what's going on in your mind. And she's like, I know it might not seem like a lot, but like I work from home and this $5,000 to fix this air conditioner. If I work from home, I can't live here and not have air conditioning. And if I have to pay for it, then I can't afford furniture. And I can't live in a place where I don't have furniture. It's like a young first-time buyer. It was actually impressive she was buying at that age. And she's like, so I can either have furniture and no air conditioning, which I can't like really comfortably work from home, and that's my livelihood, or like I fix the air conditioner, have no furniture. I'm just not willing to do that. Yeah. And I'm not trying to be difficult. This is just that. And I just was like, so we figured out a way to make it work, but then it just was another like reinforcement of that. Like we sometimes think, and maybe I should just say for myself, sometimes like I might think from someone's like attitude or behavior or observing them that they might be like, oh, you're acting crazy or this or that. But people aren't really like crazy. No. There's things behind that are causing like them to think, feel, and act certain ways. And so being in a role like I have or like you have where we're of service of people is being able to be curious and hold back our own like judgments, opinions, and desire to be self-serving, I have found allows me to connect with them and draw that out and see the real motivation so I can actually help them. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, as you're talking, it's like I see the parallels between what we do even more so. And the thing moving is all about like, it's a very destabilizing experience. And for me, I think because of my energetic connection and just what I was going through personally, like I was so viscerally aware of like, I feel like I have no container holding me anymore. Like from the second I decided I'm moving out of this house to when I got into the new house, in between that period, I felt like I don't have safety. Like I'm not safe.
Is that what you mean by container? Because sometimes the language you use, I'm not like, I'm sure like the listeners know, but like,
like a container to hold me, right? Like just because your home represents safety, you know? Totally. And the second it's not yours, it's like, I'm a foreigner in my house. And that's kind of how I felt. Yeah. I started to recognize every single day from the second I was like, I can't live here anymore. It didn't feel like mine anymore. It wasn't my house anymore. And I felt like I'm not supposed to be here. Like I don't belong here. And when you feel like you don't belong, like you feel completely unsettled, And so like I needed a container of safety to get me through that, And so that's like when you meet me for the first time, when you come and you bring me a book and we sit down and we have coffee and we talk for 3 hours about our stories. I'm like, this is what I need because I need him to really know me. I need him to really care about me. And like what you said is true. A lot of people act like, we care. We put our customers first. And most people don't, because most people don't know how to listen. And most people are not curious enough, unfortunately, to really want to know people, And I think about, with what I do, what I'm getting at is there's vulnerability, right? Like it whether or not somebody else perceives it that way, like for me going through that process, that was very vulnerable for me to say, hey, I'm entrusting you with walking me through this process of releasing this house and like going into my next home, right? That's a very vulnerable space. And when someone comes in for energy healing, and they're, you know, sitting there and we're talking, it's a very vulnerable space, right?
Yeah.
They're trusting me with their field, their heart. I know what that's like. You know, like people get nervous. Like she can read my thoughts. She knows everything in there that I don't want to tell anybody. You know, I understand it's very vulnerable for people because they suddenly feel stripped. Right?
By the way, can we touch on that for 1 second? So for anyone, like, I know you have your people that listen, but if anyone is listening because they know me and they're like not sure who you are or what you do, I, for the record, was very skeptical.
Yeah.
The minute I walked into your energy room, the first time I went to your house, like my cheeks like lifted up and I was like smiling ear to ear. And I was like, I don't know why I feel like this in this room.
Yeah.
And that's when I became a believer, because I'm like hearing you say all this stuff. I'm like, okay, Christina, like, sure, like, yeah, whatever. Like, I mean, I'm skeptical by nature, right? But when I went in that room and like I had an uncontrollable like reaction in my body, like I was like, wow, there's something going on here.
Powerful,
And then the more I got to know you, I was just like, yeah, you're just, and when we did the energy session, like some of the stuff you were saying, you saw, and they were like some of the things I was thinking. I was like, all right, this girl's got something going on. And I was talking to your friends at your going away party, and they were like saying similar stuff, and I was like, okay, now I'm a believer. But it's funny you say that, because knowing you, I see you as such a strong person, and you're so confident and just like really like authentically you, and you just don't give a fuck. You are so you. Even when I listen to your podcast, it's like you don't try to make it perfect. You sometimes are like, yeah, you know, but whatever, and like talking about, you know, drinking milk like a baby and doing this, and you're like, I can't believe I'm telling people this, and it's like, and you're like, but people don't think, and it's like, I don't even look at it as like weird, because you just like own it and you're you, and I love that about you. But I did feel that at times, and I felt so honored because I saw you like drop down like the like I'm the all powerful like strong fuck with me Christina to like I'm like vulnerable and trusting you in this space, and like I need you to like do this. And I was, for the record, very honored, and it was nice to see that side of you, because when you see someone who's so strong, I think, at least for me, I can't speak for other people, but sometimes like my mind is like, they're always that way. It's like it was very humanizing, and also just like cool that you would allow me to be there and experience you in that way.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was just, like I said, it's been a really cool experience just getting to be in service and work with you, but also to get to know you as a friend and just see you just operate is fascinating. You are a very interesting person.
Thank you. I like to be interesting. But, you know, I get that. And here's the thing. If I was a man, nobody would question that behavior, right?
That's true. I will give you that.
Right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't. But the thing is, because this comes up, depending on how you know me, you're going to get a very different side of me, right? So my closest friends, my partner, my mentors, people I'm in masterminds with, like, they're going to see the vulnerable me, right? But my job is to be that safe space for people, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's my job. And so when people are coming to me in any work capacity, like, my job is to be strong, right? Like, when they're coming to me and they feel broken, they feel ashamed, they feel embarrassed, they feel confused, they feel lost, right? Like, my job is to hold the container so they can be in that session with me and feel safe and feel like they're held, right? And like, that's part of the transformation, you know, and that's also a lot with, there's that of what I do, which is connected to, of course, my own journey and how I grew up and the experiences I went through. And like, I had to toughen up, you know, I had to be strong. I had to be strong for the people around me. And so much of that is why I care so much about other people, you know, because like, I know what it's like to just so desperately wish somebody would like help, you know?
I'm the same way.
Yeah. And like, that's kind of where I wanted to go next, because I feel like so much of what I respect about you and admire is like your journey and your story. Yeah. And I think that's the piece that really, I mean, talk about business. It's like, wow, like I feel safe with this person. Yeah. Like they're a real human, and like look at what he's overcome, and look what he's he's been through. And so I would love for you to kind of share, you know, what led you to this level of service that you show up with.
Yeah, so I'd be happy to discuss that with you. And one thing that I was thinking as you were saying that and just kind of realizing for the first time is just how I was there to hold space or be a container for you when you were vulnerable. I was able, even after we went and saw some houses when you were considering staying in San Diego, and we went and had sushi with Andrew. Love him, by the way. What's up, brother? We're there, and you allowed me to be vulnerable and be a human being with you, and still not make me feel judged or be like, no, I don't want to work with you anymore because you've shown me part of you. And for me, that was so comforting because I felt in my line of work, just like yours, and this is another similarity, is like, and with good reason, is like, I wouldn't want to hire a real estate professional who's not like kind of like smarter than me, better than me, like this thing, or a lawyer or anything. And I'm not saying my clients look at me like that, for the record. I'm just saying it's like, I would want someone that can bring me value. I want someone who's sharp and on point, right? And negotiating on my behalf and like doing all this stuff. I want them to be capable and on point. And I was on that. So when I was not as on that and I could be there with you, and I don't feel like I was like hindered because I wasn't taking on too much business at that time. But it was like, it was nice to be able to be exposed because a lot of my clients know me in a very limited capacity. Yeah. And like, I don't share with like a ton of people because I think a lot of people might judge. But for me, like, my story goes back to, I guess, like, I always felt different, right? Like, even since a young age. And the first time I talked to this man who was like the wise electrician, he was like this very blue collar guy who didn't look like anything special, like, and it was out in like deep East County, and he like looked at me, I could tell deep East County. I'm from East County too. Shout out. What's up, East County? El Cajon represent. Originally North Park though, so yeah.
A little different.
Anyways, and he asked me, he's like, how old were you when you felt like you were different from other people? And the way he asked that, I felt seen for like the first time ever. And I was like 5 years old. Like as soon as I can remember, I felt like different. I felt alone in a crowded room or amongst friends, and I felt like I just like people would like talk to me and I'd see their mouth move. I just felt odd and different, and I felt like I didn't feel like, I just didn't feel how other people felt, and I didn't think how other people felt, and that feels very like isolating, and it feels shameful, and like there's something wrong with me. And so like I tried like everything else to like fit in or like try different things or get into different things or different styles or just try to fit. And I felt like I never really fit anywhere. And because of that, I think like as life went on, like I started to try to find ways that now I see are like survival, right? Like it's like, and the survival, and I don't expect a lot of people to get like this, but it's like basically like the way that I felt like pretty much on a consistent basis was I felt like I was restless, I felt irritable, and I felt like discontent, right? So like anytime it'd be like something outside of myself is going to make me feel better. Like if I get the job, the girl, the this, whatever it is, this object, that's going to make me okay. And it would make me like good for a minute, and then I would be discontent very quickly. And I just thought that that's how I was. I felt like I was broken, and I just wasn't, like something was wrong with me. Like what it felt like was like everybody was we're in like this big room waiting to go to the seminar of like how to be a human being. And I went in the bathroom. Everyone went in the seminar, went through the seminar, got the pamphlet, and came out and left. And I came out of the bathroom like, where is everybody?
That's a great metaphor.
Oh, did you feel like that
yes,
too?
100%.
Oh, yeah.
100%. Oh, yeah. I mean, from the second I was conscious, I was like, I don't belong here.
That's why
and I just remember feeling like listening to people talk and being like, you guys are all missing it. And no, like everyone's missing it. That's how I felt. And I also could tell when everybody was lying, and like I could just see, and I always felt different for sure.
Yeah. So mine feeling different too. Like it caused like a lot of like loneliness, and I didn't understand like why I felt the way I did. And so like for me, like the answer pretty quickly became drugs and alcohol. And so like partying and being like living a party lifestyle, that was how I operated, and that's how I felt okay. And it's like, it sounds so silly for me to say right now, but that was like the first time I felt like a sense of identity.
Yeah.
Because I had nothing that I really like liked or fit in or excelled at. And so that was something that like I was good at, right? Not really like good at, but you can't really be good at partying, I guess. But you know what I mean? Like I felt
but
like
it gives you something to latch into.
To latch into,
and
right?
here's the thing, like my perspective on addiction, let's say, of any sort, and anywhere we're going to extremes, you know, it's like at our core, we're looking for source. We're looking for ourselves. We're looking for connection. And
For
some
sure.
people, you know, will use escapism. You can use spirituality as escapism, right?
Yeah.
To get, because you're seeking. Other people use drugs because they're seeking. Other people use sex, right? Because they're seeking. They use
food.
gambling, food, right? Like when I look at the energetic core of any of those types of behaviors, it's like we're all really looking for the same thing. We're just going about it in a different way.
Totally.
Because you know, you're looking for that hit, that high, that sense of connection, that sense of purpose. And like, you know, there are, in terms of our bodies, right, like healthier ways to go about that and unhealthier ways, right? Like,
sure.
I mean, I can, you know, I can relate in my own way, right? But I think about like alcohol or a drug, and then how I feel when I channel.
Yeah.
And like what I would, what I was looking for, that I kind of got a little bit, you know, with a substance. When I'm channeling, I'm like, this is actually it.
Yeah.
Like this, like the divine flowing through me, and like the sense of connection, you know?
Well, I totally know what you mean. And I love that you said that, because I think there is something about like the spirit, right? And I think people sometimes think spirit and they think it has to be this like super esoteric, like woo-woo thing that's out there. But I think the spirit, or your spirit, is just the energy filled in your body. And people, you know, you can't really deny that there's energy in your body, because that's what emotions are. They're like electrical impulses in your body, right?
Yeah.
If you're mad, you're like, I can feel it like in my chest or wherever you feel it, right? And so to have, I was talking about yesterday with a friend, like to have a spiritual experience, like the first time, I think, one of the first times I had what I would consider to be like a spiritual experience or spiritual awakening was when I read Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth. And I was in like the right place, like when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And my uncle, who's like, and I was like on the rise in business and really ambitious, you know, and my uncle is like this finance guy, is like, hey, like, you should, I was telling him about another book. He's like, you should read this book. So I think this is going to be like a business book.
Yeah.
Right. And this is going to make me successful. And I like, you know, if you've read that book, it starts off and he's like, and I listened to it too. So he's like, the birds and the crystals. And this motherfucker's talking about birds and crystals and shit like that. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? But I kept going because, you know, I wanted to see what it was. Yeah. And I was totally blown away and not expecting it to be a spiritual book. Mm-hmm. And I had a total like spiritual experience and awakening. And what I mean by that is the way that I thought and felt about things changed. Yeah. I got rid of my TV, and I have one again, but I got rid of my TV and all this stuff, and I totally changed like how I was living for a while. And it was really profound, but it was not enough to like keep on that path, right? And
can you give me a timeline with all this? Like, how old are you when you started getting into like partying?
Probably like, I think I found out like pretty quickly, like I just always felt like off, and I felt like I couldn't do things. And I remember talking with one of my really good friends in high school, and we both were talking about how for us it felt like to do like normal stuff, to just like get up and like make your bed and like pick up your room and like get to school, like normal people just like get up and do that. Yeah. And for us, we talked about how it felt like we had to like dig ourselves out of a 20-foot hole, and we're so exhausted getting out of that hole. It's like, okay, now I can like, I got to like throw everything together haphazard and like just to function. and everything's totally unmanageable. Funny now, both of us are sober and learned what was wrong with us, right? And this kind of, and I believe it to be a spiritual problem that has a spiritual solution.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's from an early age I felt off, but like once I was like probably 14, I mean, we started like smoking weed and drinking a little bit, but like it didn't really.
When did it start becoming like identity? Like I do this.
I mean, in high school, I had like, you know, like I remember wearing like a Jack Daniel's t-shirt under my sweatshirt because like, you know, I had a zip down, so I'd like zip it down and I was like had it. But then like when the narcs, that's what we called the campus security, I'd have to like zip it up because like we weren't allowed to wear it. And I had like a Mickey's t-shirt because we still like drink like Mickey's 40s and do all this stuff. We were like little hellions, man. Like growing up, it's so funny. Like my same friend that I mentioned, who we were talking about digging out of the hole, he was telling me like he lives in another city now, and he was like telling me like, oh, I was telling like some of my new friends about like some of our stories from like high school and right after, and they're like, you are the craziest fucking person we know. And it's funny, it was like, that was just like a Tuesday, you know? And like, so yeah, like I just think it just started like, because I just felt, and a lot of the people I was with, like, I think we were just trying to solve the problem of like feeling okay.
Totally. I mean,
you know,
I get it. Like I started partying really young.
Oh, see, we've never had that conversation.
Yeah, we never talked about it.
I don't know about
most people don't know about what
party,
my
Christina?
life was like. Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh yeah. Most people
you
don't
think
know
we're
that.
like if we would have crossed paths then though? I don't think you would have liked me.
Yeah,
maybe
not.
You would have liked me though. I don't know. It's hard to say.
I would not have.
No, I don't think so. Well,
but so because I want to paint this picture. So it's like, okay, you're getting into this, you know, in high school. But you started, like, you went after your career at a young age.
Well, not
kind
entirely. Well, not really, because like, well, yes and no. So like, I'm sure that anyone listening realizes that I'm in the real estate business, right? I help people buy, sell, and invest in real estate in San Diego and all over the United States. I can help refer them out. Mm-hmm. I knew from an early age, I don't know why, I had an intuition that I wanted to do real estate. I just knew.
Why do you think you had that intuition?
I don't know. I tell
yes,
people.
You do. Yes, you
no,
do.
I will tell you what I tell people, but I honestly don't know. The honest to God truth is that I had an intuition that this is what I'm supposed to do. Mm-hmm. I promise you, that's the honest truth.
Yeah.
What I tell people and how I try to make sense of it, and maybe this is it, I don't know, is that I remember having a couple like dads on like kids of the Little League team, and they drove like nice cars, and they were like really like charismatic and stuff because they were like, you know, lead generating around the Little League games. Yeah. And also my mom used to always love to go to open houses. So we would like go, and I hated it as a kid, by the way. But I hated a lot of things that I now like, right? And so I kind of attribute those things, but really like I just felt like an intuition to do it. And it's maybe because I knew like I would not survive like working a traditional office job, and I knew that I should do some kind of sales. Yeah. But I wanted to also be successful and like make money, and I didn't even know what like real estate agents did besides like selling homes is like, okay, well, how does that work? I didn't know, like, when I got my real estate license, I didn't know what escrow meant. Yeah. Right? Like, and I was a fully licensed real estate agent.
I didn't really know what escrow meant until, you know, a couple months ago.
Yeah, but I mean, that was like, when I first got my real estate license. I didn't even know what it meant through my first buying of a house. I was like, I don't know what any of this is. See, and for anyone listening, that's why we really believe, like, honestly, is like, an approach we take is when people get good education and reliable information, they tend to usually make better decisions. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so we try to teach you. So hopefully you learned before. But that's the challenge, working with people like you were like, just do it. Yeah. They don't want to take the time to like do that thing, and it makes it like a little bit bumpier, but it's okay. We got through it.
We did it.
But yeah.
Well, here's my point is like, people, you have that intuition as a kid just because that's your higher self saying like, this is the path. And like, to me, this is one of your vessels for your spiritual work on the planet. Like, you're in the business of everything I described earlier. Like, that's a huge rebirth shift experience for people. Like, and I think every career, like, position people hold, like, I think it's really important on the planet that we start realizing like the deeper meaning behind everything that we're doing and how we can really show up for people, you know? So anyway, but I want to get back to, your,
Sure.
let's get back there. Let's paint the
Okay, so we'll
picture.
get back there. So like in high school, I grew up playing a lot of sports. Like I've played soccer, baseball, wrestling, football. Like I played a bunch of sports, and I loved playing sports. But as I got older and got into high school, like I found alcohol, marijuana, cigarettes, and women, and I was like, yeah, I'm never playing sports again. Right? Like I was ineligible. Like the 1 year that I was on the soccer team, I think like it shows me in the yearbook is on the team. Like I never played because I was ineligible like right before the first game, and they're like, yeah, you can't play.
Okay.
Which sucked. But it just like, I was just at that point, like I felt so lost anyway. And so I think like what a lot of people don't realize when people are using drugs and alcohol, whether it's like getting into it or like at a problematic level, is that they feel off, they feel hopeless. People don't understand how they feel. And it's like what I've heard, the same guy that asked me, like, how old were you when you felt different? He said, if you knew how I felt, you would know why I did this. And I by no means am I writing off like anyone or my behavior as an excuse of like, oh, I felt that way, so it's okay. It's not okay, right? It's okay, but it's not an excuse. But if people knew like that they aren't actually hopeless, that it just seems hopeless, and that like you don't have to go like down the depths or like go like, and that's why it's so important. And I love your mission about like connecting with people and being like the person that you like you alluded to or kind of mentioned like, well, I didn't have like this or this kind of person, so I want to be that person for people. That's a huge part of my mission. Is I felt like I had really great parents, but I didn't have like the mentorship that I wanted or craved. And so I try to be that for my team and other people. So like anyone that like reaches out to me and wants help in something that I can actually help with, I do it. Like I'll like sometimes like, and like I'll sometimes coach people or get them started for free. I don't want anything because it's like I would just want them to like not suffer because I know what it's like or to be lost. And then it just, so anyways, like for me, like in high school, just kind of like I knew, like I was smart enough to know like I'm not going to 4-year college, but I just kind of thought like I'll outgrow this phase and eventually like I'll do this. And what ended up happening was I like barely graduate high school, and like I'm not a dumb person, right? Like I could have like,
I know.
I just didn't go to, thank you. You're like, actually? No, but I remember, this is kind of a funny story. I was in high school and I was like, I'm going to just take like the low level math to graduate because I'm not going to college. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. Like, why am I?
Do your parents care?
Yeah.
Okay. So they were like,
I'm so sorry for my parents. I put them through so much hell, and I love, and they're the best parents. And that's the other thing too. If there are any parents of people like that have like have gone through like struggles with drugs and alcohol or partying or whatever, it's like you can't make someone like drink or use drugs, and you can't make them not drink or use drugs. Yeah. It's an internal problem that requires an internal solution, and there's nothing outside of yourself that will make you feel okay. And there's nothing outside of yourself that can help what's going on inside. It's a temporary fix or Band-Aid. And whatever you use as that Band-Aid or fix eventually becomes the primary problem. So if you're using food, like eventually you're going to have probably health issues or overweight or whatever, right? If you're using exercise, that's probably a better, healthier one. But you see people go into like anorexia or like exercise themselves into bad health.
Yeah,
right?
I had that.
Yeah. And a lot of women, and there's some men as well that have that. And it's like, but what's tricky about that one is that's like harder to see, I think. Like it's really the blessing.
Well, you tell like, if, for me, I was like, this is healthy for me. I'm exercising, but like it wasn't healthy for me. I'm like 80 pounds. Like,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, and nobody can really say anything. Like people do, but a lot of people don't. Versus like, hey, we're worried about your alcohol consumption.
Oh, because with alcohol, there's problems, right? Like,
yeah.
and you can tell, like, you can smell it on people's breath or like whatever, right? Like, if you're using alcohol or drugs, like eventually, like,
Yeah.
it's not a secret.
Yeah.
You know, like, or if like, even if I was never really like,
well, and it affects your function.
yeah, for sure.
And
And I was
other
never
things,
like a
yeah.
daily like
Yeah.
drinker. I was like a weekend warrior party guy. I was like work hard, play hard, right? But it just like I couldn't if I partied on the weekend and then all week like am working and doing stuff and like I could not connect spiritually at
Yeah.
all. And that is exhausting. And so what you're talking about is when you're channeling and you're
Yeah.
really connected spiritually, that like, for lack of a better way, like fills that void, or it like gives you that need for connection and connection to source energy, or however you identify it. Maybe some people would think of it as God. Everyone's got their own word, but it's all the same thing, like my opinion. But that connection is so important, like connection with that like source and higher self, and then with others. And what we're really seeking is that. And when we can't get that, what I have learned, and what I wish I could have told my younger self, but I probably wouldn't have listened, was that it's not everybody else. Like, it's you. And you're not able to connect with people because of all the chaos going on inside of you. So like what you really need to do is find someone who can be a good mentor and role model, right? Or someone who can help you, who's been through that already, show you the way so you can clean house, right? Like clean up what's going on inside you and like get over all your stuff and your old beliefs and your old way of doing things and like clean the house, right? And then like learn a new way to live and then have an example of that and then come to like believe it. Because it's like, when you feel how I felt, it's so hopeless because your whole life people don't realize, because it's not the majority of the population that's just wired this way, right? So normal people just don't get it, like a lot of them, right? Unless they've been through, like, the only like normal people that get me are people who have like gone through issues with food or some other thing, and they're like, yeah, I didn't like party like you did, but I get it because I've had it with something else, right? And they feel that. And so I just, you get to a point, like I got to a point where like I didn't believe it was possible for me. And then it's kind of like, if that's the case, just like how I was like, I'm not going to college, so why am I going to try at school? It's like, well, if this is never going to work in my life, I'm never going to like be able to achieve my dreams. Not only like achieve my dreams, but never even be able to just like basically like hold down like a decent employment and have a decent relationship. It's like, well, what's the point? And that's where it gets scary. And that's where it's like, well, what's the point? Because some people, like, I've never, thank God, like ever considered suicide, and don't think I ever would. But like, unfortunately, you see people all the time. And I've known people who have committed suicide, and or have like, I grew up like with people who've like died, OD'd on drugs and died. And unfortunately now we see that a lot. And it just starts with something as simple as like, I don't feel right and I need a solution, you know? And I wish that people knew, like, there's a different way of going about it. You don't have to go down to the depths, but like you have to like acknowledge that like it starts with you. And like I said, like the process for me was like, find someone that I can believe, because it's like, if I can't believe that this is going to work for me, like I'm already doomed.
Do you remember the moment, like I want to get to like that pinnacle point. Like, do you remember the moment where you're like, I need to find a way out?
Yeah. So like, there's a couple, right? So like I said, like I knew that the way that I partied, like I just thought like other people were like squares or pussies. I was like, you guys just, and honestly, like where I grew up, that was kind of like a lot of my friends. It was kind of like, we're just like
it's just
little
what people say.
badasses. We're just kind of like that, right? But I thought I would just outgrow it, and people tell you like, oh, you'll outgrow that. Well, other people did, and I just kind of didn't, and mine just kind of graduated and got more like hardcore. And then what happened is I got into more and more like progressively like harder drugs, and then I got to a point where I was just like fed up. And what had happened is just like I was able to stop, and pretty like soon after I stopped and I had like made a decision, I finally like got kind of like lucky, like by the grace of God, to be able to like stop. I met, or I connected with a woman I had already met, and we started dating. And this woman was from Tijuana, Mexico. And it just started like something that was going to be like this, like maybe like, oh, we'll just like get to know each other. And we like totally fell in love. So I ended up going from like being really low and feeling like I failed out of community college. I barely graduated high school. I have no prospects, no money. I live at home with my parents. I had a DUI, so I have no driver's license, like a total fucking loser.
Yeah.
And I meet this beautiful girl who's like very well educated and smart and just like so compassionate. And she and I both, because I had re-enrolled in community college, and she and I were both studying psychology, and she was so compassionate, and we started dating and fell in love. And so I would go to Mexico and go out with her, and I could like take her out on dates and like with like $40 like all week, like and have like change coming back.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, this is like I don't know, like 15 years ago or 10 years ago or something like that. It was a while ago. But I also got to like escape, because in my neighborhood, like I felt like I had like just like I was a piece of shit. And I felt like people always asked you like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I was like, nothing. Like, I'm a loser. I don't have a driver's license. And it's like, as a man, I think like a lot of people like discount or think like men have it like so easy, or like this and that, and like blah, 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 patriarchy, this. And there's some truth to that. Right. But like, as a man, like when you can't provide and you can't see a way out, and maybe you're struggling, like some people with depression or with drugs or alcohol or whatever it is, it's like it just compounds and makes it worse, because you're like, and when you're not able to connect in your masculine as a man, you just feel worthless.
Yeah.
And that's what it is worthless. Like, that's your self-esteem. Like, how much are you worth? Right. It's like, and as a man, like, I feel like we have to have worth. Like, it's hard for us to experience unconditional love.
Yeah.
Right. Beside from like our mother, right. Or our golden retriever, and they still want food.
Yeah.
And so like meeting this person and being able to spend time with her in a different country and learn a different language. And then as things got more serious, I started spending more time down there, and I was like living part in Mexico and then part here, because we dated for years. I slowly was like building back, and I didn't have to have a car, because like I wouldn't cross my car even when I got my license back and my car back anyway. And because she would just be like, oh, just cross the border, I'll pick you up. So I got to like feel like self-esteem, because I got to like date the kind of woman that I always knew I wanted to date. I got to like be welcomed into like her family by like a family that I really loved and adored. And I got to be treated with like like respect and decency, and got to kind of like go into this like different area where no one knew me, and I knew no one knew me and didn't have any judgment for me.
Yeah.
And I really needed that. And so I was able to like really kind of like have this metamorphosis, and I really wanted to do that, because I really didn't want to like let her or her family down, because I just loved them so much and cared about them so much, and they were so good to me, and they were so smart and just like really like well educated, worldly, just like amazing people. And like for me, I always wanted, like, my mom studied abroad, and my mom and I are close, and she was kind of like more my like hero role model, right? And she studied abroad in France when she was in college, and I always thought like, I'm going to be like my mom and do that. Well, I was a total loser, as I have said already. So I didn't go to college in the traditional way, and I failed at a community college. So I go back, and I get to like basically live part-time in another country that's in my backyard, learn the language, learn the culture. And like I felt like I was getting this experience I always wanted.
Yeah.
And so during this time, I like really rebuilt slowly but surely, and got to a place where I ended up graduating from SDSU with like a pretty good GPA. I like regained self-esteem and self-respect. And for the first time in my life, I felt really passionate about something. And that was Mexican culture, learning Spanish, and in Mexico. And I felt like I had actually a healthy kind of identity, because I felt welcome there. I felt like that. And I think it's worth noting, like, when I grew up, I was born in the late 80s and grew up, like in the 90s. Both of my parents worked, and I had a nana from Guadalajara, Mexico, who took care of me from like birth to like 13. And my parents worked a lot and busy. So she was basically like another mother to me. And so I grew up eating Mexican food and being like around Mexican culture and TV and like Spanish language. And so I think there was like part of me that really like craved that connection, you know, and I felt like it really like kind of like completed that loop for me and allowed me to kind of like step in to this. And it just like, I think Mexico is one of the most beautiful countries with the most beautiful culture and people. And anyone that feels like scared to go or like anything like that or any kind of like animosity towards them, like you don't know shit. They're the best.
It's scary everywhere. Like in the like you
Yeah,
go anywhere in the world
yeah.
and like, you know what I mean? That's just like that's not, you know.
Yeah. And it's like and I could not have felt more welcomed and more cared for and respected. And I think what like happens and you'd be surprised, like so many people when you're down there say stuff like they're like, so Michael, what do you think of Mexico? Like I'm gonna be like, yeah, this place fucking sucks. You know, like but like they want to know because they're so used to, I think, like Americans just like trashing it or using it like their like playground. Like they go down, get drunk, like do stuff they wouldn't do at home and behave in this way. Like it's this like place and they don't show it respect. But when you go, I think anywhere and you treat the people, the culture and everything with respect. And then also like I have, you know, I'm competitive. So it's like I went down there and I'm like, I'm not going to be like this fucking pinche gringo that's like, so the grossest thing, the hottest salsa, I'm like, yeah, give me that. I'm going to eat it. And like show you that I'm like willing to do that.
Yeah.
And so they really welcomed me. I mean, I remember being at a party and they're like, oh, like don't give the gringo the salsa. And like my ex-suegro, like my ex's dad was like, oh no, Miguelito. They call me Miguelito down there.
Yeah.
They're like, Miguelito, he can handle the salsa. Like he's chingon. He's badass. Like he's like a honorary Mexican. And like I like felt that and I felt like they mean that. And so that for me, that gave me that connection that I was craving. And during that point in my life, I didn't like really like abuse like drugs or alcohol.
Yeah.
When I broke up with that woman and I got into real estate because we planned a trip to Paris where her mom was like, do you think Michael's going to propose to you? And like a month before that trip, like we broke up and we didn't tell our families because her family, my family, we all went. Like my mom, dad, brothers and sisters.
You went on the trip?
Oh,
broken
yeah.
up?
With
pretending
both of
like
our
you were?
whole families. No, well, we didn't tell them because we had this plan for like months. And we've stayed in like a really nice place in Saint-Germain, like really amazing trip.
Oh my God.
So we didn't want to stress everyone out
because
it's a stressful trip.
I would not
Well,
be
the thing
able to
is,
hold
like,
that in.
look, this is like I said, this is an amazing woman from an amazing family, and the thing is, like, I have nothing but love and respect for her and her family.
How did it end? Did it end amicably?
It was amicable. It was just like, hey, like, I think what it comes down to, if I had to, like, with my knowledge now and wisdom now, it's like the really important, like, two key components in any, like, relationship that are necessary for sustainability is to be aligned on your vision and your values.
Yeah.
And I think we value different things and we had different visions for the future. And I was getting into real estate, and in her culture, it's like you don't really move in with someone until you're married. And I think, like, with fairness to her, like, and I mean, she may have reasons that I don't know, but like in fairness to her, like, I was not a man at that point. And I, like, if I were a woman, I would not have wanted to marry me at that point. Like,
it's very self-aware.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, and also she was a lot more, like, mature than I was.
Yeah.
I was, like, finishing my degree, and I felt like I never got my college experience, so I was trying to have it. And she graduated before me, and she was trying to, like, she was working a job. And, like, in Mexico, she's working, like, for way less than we make here, but a job that requires a college education in like 10, 12-hour days. And I'm like, oh, I still want to like hang out with my bros on the weekend, you know? And it just wasn't, it was like out of alignment, right? So when that ended, I got like, basically like I took my real estate exam. Like we broke up. Like I took my real estate like exam like 2 weeks later or something like that. Then we went to Paris. But I had taken my real estate exam. I passed. We went to Paris. I came back and started real estate.
Yeah.
So my first year in real estate, like I was not like in a good headspace, and I was like 26, I think. And I was like, I didn't know anything. I never really had like a great job. I did well in sales, but I just like never showed up to work on time or had consistency in anything. And I just like was really devastated about this, like, because not only did I like break up with someone I really loved, and like I really believed that I was going to marry this woman.
Yeah.
Right. And so I felt not only that I lost a partner, or like in my whole future, I kind of saw this as a future, but her family and my family, like we were close, like we all went to Paris together. I mean, like my parents are still like, we miss her family, you know, and like, and her dad, like, you know, like I really like love and respect that man. Like he would like tell me things and teach me things about like how to be a man. And I crave that so much, because my father's an amazing man, but his dad died when he was 10. So he was missing a couple like things, and I don't think he had it to like, and my dad teaches like things more through like actions and being an example. But I'm someone who likes to be like, not only like observed, but I like to be told. Like that's how I learn better. Yeah, you know. And so I felt like this is someone who'd be like, stand up straight, like pull up your pants. Like, cause we were like sagging, or like when you do this, like do that. And he taught me these things, but it was like stern, but with compassion. And I felt like I really needed that. And it was a great example of like a lot of the elements of a man that I wasn't and wanted to be and could like emulate. And so I felt like I like lost all of this and the connection and this like identity of like being someone who like, because at that time, like my Spanish was really good at that time. Like I still am like okay, but like, I mean, after like we broke up, like I dated a couple girls that don't really speak English, because I speak Spanish pretty well, like much better back then. Because I was living basically like part of the week in Mexico and part here, you know, and like understand the culture, and I've got other stories about that experience, but for another time. But like, so when I lost all of that connection with this people in these family, like I started like going back with my old like crew. And the thing is like, I kind of was hanging with that old crew, and these are like great guys, but they don't have like that thing that I have, right? Like they like to party, but they don't have the like internal like whatever flaw, deficit, whatever you want to call it, disease, whatever you want to call it.
I wouldn't call it that, but okay.
They don't have that thing that I got, you know?
Yeah.
And so like when I started dating this Mexican woman, and then like I like slowly like went out of that crew, but then like as soon as I was done, I slowly went back into the crew. And so like I started like trying to feel that connection, and like there was nothing for me to connect with or do but like go out and like PB and do the party thing.
Good old PB.
Good old PB. So like
Forever super senior.
Forever super senior. Yeah, I call I call PB like Neverland, like Peter Pan land, because it's like where you go with the lost boys to never grow up.
It is.
Yeah, but it's a beautiful place. Shout out to all my PB homies. But yeah, so I like started like kind of going back there, and like over time, like I was building my business in real estate, because after my first year, I was kind of like, okay, I'm going to take it more seriously, and I kind of like would kind of like ebb and flow, and I like sensed that like partying was not serving me, but it wasn't like to the point, because like I stopped doing drugs. It wasn't to the point where it was like problematic enough for me to be like, okay, I need to stop this. But it was enough where I like had a vague enough sense like, okay, like when I'm partying and stuff, like I'm not in my best, and I'm not going to be able to build the life and business I want when I'm like partying. Yeah. And so I would kind of like do it on and off, or like kind of like weekend warrior, like work really hard, then like play really hard. And I started building up my business, and I met this dude, like I talked about, Thatch, and he taught me about.
How did you meet him?
So I went to this thing. So there's this dude that I really admire, and a lot of people in real estate really admire. His name's Kevin Sturdivant with Case Real Estate. Shout out Case. This dude has always been like very original with really cool marketing, really just like dope content, and just like a very like unique style. Like he's very him, and like has built this like almost like a movement. Like I think that they're just awesome in everything they do, like really cool. And so he was speaking on a panel of other real estate agents. I think it sold like, I don't know, somewhere between 1 and 4 homes. And was probably like 27, and he was doing this, like speaking on a panel with these other agents. And so we go up to Orange County, like me and some of my people from Keller Williams La Jolla, shout out, my brokerage. And we go up there, and he and this panel like speak, and then they had this like other guy come up and like pitch his like coaching program. And so this dude comes up, and he's from Vietnam. He has like a pretty hard like Vietnamese accent, and he like puts on this PowerPoint and just drops this just heartfelt, just like really real, like just presentation about his life and how he came over from Vietnam when he was like 8, and they were the last airplane out because they were working with the Americans, and you know the Viet Cong were coming in, and they come to this country and are living in, you know, like slummy places, and his whole journey to like multimillionaire, and it has all the elements of a hero's journey, and it was very spiritual in nature. I did not know this at the time. I was not into any kind of spirituality. I was not like into any kind of anything like that. The only thing that I could say that I felt at that point was like, I felt that I had a void that I had felt for some time, but was starting to be very intense. Like kind of like, you know, when you feel a little hungry, and then it gets like to the point where you're like hangry and like, give me something to eat. Yeah. I was getting to like hangry. I had been feeling it a little bit for a void, but it like I was getting to that point of hangry where I was like really needing something, and I didn't know what. And I tried going to like church with people. I could like vaguely sense it was spiritual, but I didn't like know that. Do you know what I mean?
I totally.
So this guy, like I just go out up to him after, because like I love being inspired and like doing stuff, and I go up to him and I just go, hey dude, like that was really awesome. And like I'm super skeptical by nature. Like I don't trust people, like anybody, anything, like very skeptical, right? Because like you're not gonna get one over on me, you know. And like egoic, I know it's like, but that's like my unconscious programming and like default like lower level nature, right? And so I just tell him,
I think here's the thing, you say that a lot about yourself. I actually think you're more curious and skeptical, because the same energy you feel, like I know exactly the frequency you're talking about within yourself, and I am the same way. But I don't think of myself, I guess I could label it skeptical, but I'm just more really curious. Yeah. And like, I want to be shown that it works.
Yeah. I think that's a great insight.
So I think you're curious.
But you're a wise woman.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And I am curious too. Yeah. So I go up to him and I just go, hey dude, like, thank you so much. Like I was really inspiring. And he goes, bro, like sign up for my coaching program. He's like, trust me. And I just believed him that it was going to help. And he's like, trust me, like it's going to help you. I know it will. And like, he wasn't like salesy about it. Like he was so real and authentic and just like raw. And like this dude, like talk about energy. I hope one day you cross paths with him, because like
I hope I do too. I mean, you told me so much
aura.
Yeah, you told me so much about him.
Because he changed my life. He was like one of those people, like one of those signposts. Like he talks about being a lighthouse. Yeah. Like he's been a lighthouse, and that's why I always shout him out, because it's like everything that I have to offer to other people is not of my own, right? Like it's been given to me by somebody else. And I'm just like taking that and like putting my own like seasoning or flavor, and then being able to help, hopefully like give that to somebody else in a way that will help them, or like be on the vibrational frequency that will resonate with them, and just like kind of like take the torch and like pass it on. Right. And like, to be clear, like all this stuff that I've done to like go in and like work with others and help people and do all this, like very little of that to know of that is by my own virtue. Like I was driven to it by pain and suffering, and I was like, I can't fucking do this anymore. Right. But the paradox of all of that is then in that, like by changing and doing things and then demonstrating and then changing behaviors and habits over time, even though it doesn't start out of virtue, it becomes virtuous. And people are like, oh, you're so like virtuous. And it's like, maybe now. It's like weird. It's like, you know, it's like, you're like, well, not really, but yeah.
I mean, I see what you're saying.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I totally see what you're saying of like, it leads you there, but I do think at your core that is how you are.
I agree with you, but I think that what happens is when for me is like, that's how I am at my core and wanted to be. But part of like growing up and maturing and like spiritual, emotional, like maturity and
Yeah.
wisdom is like, I put myself out there and then got rejected, or, you know, kids are brutal. Like you get teased.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and that's what I was telling my friend Austin Santee yesterday, because he's just like a real life Superman. Just like I like he's like half golden retriever, half lion,
Yeah.
right? He's like just the archetypal like hero. And I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, like I identify with the villains. Like I always thought they were cooler. I
Yeah.
always thought like they're misunderstood.
But that's because you understand the complexity of the human experience. And when we're talking about like, why do people do these things where other people might be like, oh, she's such a bitch, or like, what an idiot, or what a loser. Like, that's not what's really going on. Like when you get curious and you get to know people, like we are complex beings.
Yes.
And people, whether or not they're conscious of the reason, have the reason, right? And when we are, you know, acting in those types of frequencies, it's usually from some type of pain or suffering, right? It's like, we're not just randomly doing things.
Totally.
You know?
I do know. And that, and I love that you say that and have that awareness and hold that energy and like, because that's, I feel like I try to do that, but it's so like, and I was saying like with my clients, but it's so hard because for us to be able to do that for others, like we have to be able, like we have to be the vessel and we have to have enough room or like you said, container. Well, we have to be the container, but if our cup is filled over to the brim, right? Like in a good way, that's good because we can pour into your cup and whatever. But if we're empty, it's like we don't have anything to give. Or conversely, if we're like full, we can't take more, right? And so it just like, I felt like I identified with the villain. And you know what's funny is someone said, the guy who like records my podcast was like, he's like, you know, like something that his girlfriend mentioned to him was like, I thought was a cool quote. Is something I'm going to probably butcher it, but it was like, heroes want, like in like movies, not in general, like the hero wants the world to stay the same and the villain wants to change the world.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of times I think they start off on a noble pursuit and then something goes awry and then it like becomes a problem. So I'm not, at this point in my life, I identify more with the hero. Yeah. But I like the heroes like Batman or a little edgier.
I totally get what you're saying because I've always felt the same way, you know, and my favorite my favorite movies and stories are like when you're getting the behind the scenes of the villain. Like one of my favorite movies of all time is Maleficent, you know, like I like movies about villains because I like the complexity of the human experience and our range of emotion. And like, I think, I don't know. I think also for me as a person, like, my whole life, I've had a lot of people project things onto me or make judgments about me when I'm just quiet, you know, and just as many people think I'm mean and a bitch as other people are like, you're so selfless, you know, like, and I'm like, how can people have such different perceptions of me, you know? And I think that always made me just a lot more like curious and compassionate for whenever anybody judged somebody else, like what's really the truth of that person? Like at the end of the day, like, and like, something I'm very proud of is that I truly like look at people like you are source in another body. And like, I see that in you. And I think, you know, that takes me back to when I hear your story, it's such a beautiful story for so many reasons. And one of those components is our ability to hold space for people to heal themselves, you know? And when you talk about that relationship you had, because I always think, you know, when someone's at a dark place, what's that thing that gets them to change? And a lot of times it's, you know, I lost everything, you know, maybe it was my health, or I lost a family member, or I blew up or something. Right. And your story is like, I was inspired, you know, like I was, and somebody really saw me, and that's the power of really seeing people. You know, I feel like going back to like in session, like so much of the magic for people is I'm sitting there and I'm like, all eyes on you. Like I'm listening to you. And most people never really get that. Like people aren't really listening to them, you know? And like, there's this larger conversation that's been going on within my community more recently, especially about this divine feminine, divine masculine thing, you know? So when I look at it from that angle as well, like there's all these divine feminines, let's just say that, right? Who are like, where's the masculine? And I'm like, I get it, but you have to like see him. You know, you have to hold space for him to rise. Like you have to see him and listen to him. And I think that all that's really connected, you know, and when you talk about mentorship, like I think a lot of people overlook the value of that. and they just think it's like a money thing.
Do you know like the number one reason I think, and this is anecdotal and also like just talking to some men I know, do you know like one of the number one reasons like why I think a lot of relationships fail, like from the man's point of view?
Tell me.
Is because we don't feel appreciated.
Yeah, 100%. I get it.
Because we do a lot that isn't like spoken. Like a lot of like things like go through a man's head, right? Mm-hmm. So like if you and I are together and we're walking, like in my mind, I'm like, if shit goes down, I'm protecting you, mm-hmm. right? And so you might not realize that we're like looking at that guy who looks mm-hmm. shady or this, but there's a lot going through, or a lot in the back of our mind of like, oh, I need to like make money and do this and grow to get there. And so there's a lot that goes on in like thought and behavior that like isn't necessarily like totally observable.
Yeah.
And a lot of like self-sacrifice, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be like sanctimonious and all this, but like whenever I felt in a relationship, like I was very unhappy, even though I was very in love or like very happy in other ways, I felt underappreciated mm-hmm. and like you said, not seen. Like I wasn't being heard. And I know on the flip side, I know a lot of women that I've talked to, when they feel unfulfilled in their relationship, they don't feel seen, they don't feel heard.
Yeah.
And I think that like one of the problems with today, and this is a very generalized statement, kind of blanketing, which I don't like to do, but like one problem I see is this like men versus women kind of dynamic that is total bullshit. It's like we need each other. Mm-hmm. We do better together. We have energies that are on the opposite poles, but they're basically the same, just on one side of the spectrum and one on the other. And together, like, we are so much better. Like, I am at my best when I'm like in a great relationship, or like even just like collaborating with you and mm-hmm. like letting you kind of like shine in your feminine and me and my masculine, and then you with some of your masculine and me and some of my feminine, right? Mm-hmm. And like having the energy go, it's like I feel like we can do such better things. And it's like the thing you said about being curious is showing up a lot. Like I can't tell you in the last couple of days how much this has come up in business and work. Funny with you. Whenever you're around, shit seems to start to kind of happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, like, and it's funny that you were talking about this story and getting inspired, because that's not the end of it. You know, like the thing I want people to understand that I have learned is you cannot be connected today on yesterday's spirituality, right? Like you must recharge it. It's like your cell phone. It's got a battery. So like if you're like meditating or praying or practicing gratitude, like standing on your head and doing yoga naked in the park, it doesn't matter. Whatever you do to get like aligned and spiritually connected, it's a very personal journey. The things that I've come to believe that are like universal for anybody, right, is kind of like, and this has been my journey, is like, first of all, you need a clean house, because if your antenna is like fucked up, you can't receive and be like connected to the frequency that is like source energy, God, universe, whatever you want to call it. So there's that. It's like if you have like a house, it's a hoarder house, you have no room for new stuff.
Yep.
Right? It's all dusty and nasty. You got to clean that shit out. So clean house. Then it's like you need to learn to trust God, or just, we don't have to sit here and talk about like what God is or what God is not, because that's not important. All you need to know is it's not you. You are not God. You don't control the universe. And there is something else that's bigger than you that like you probably should learn to cultivate a relationship or trust in, that things are going to work out, because otherwise it's very lonely and you can get into a state of hopelessness. Right? Then the third component of this is like helping others. So it's like clean house, because like we said, like if you ain't got it, you can't give it away. Right? If I don't have like peace and serenity, how am I supposed to be like a good kind of like servant to you? Yeah. Right? How am I supposed to be able to help you? And like we're talking about being curious, that takes a lot of energy, because it's like I'm holding this space as a container for you, and like let me figure you out. But if I'm like, oh, I'm worried about this and I gotta go to the doctor, it's like I can't really be that curious. I'm like, yeah, okay, I got you. Yeah, that's cool. I heard you. Like that's it. Like bye. So it's like we have to be clean. We have to then like trust this thing, because sometimes it's like I don't see how I can get out of this situation. Yeah. If you would have told me last year, when I'm like starting to be like Dude, my business in 2022 was like almost $1 million business.
Mm-hmm.
In 2023, I was making a fraction of that. Okay. Like I have an office, a mortgage, a car. Like I've got overhead, right? Not to mention I want to like grow and eat food and do stuff. So I'm like in this space. I had no idea how I was going to like make income, because it's like I was just in this space where it's like I was just trying to like survive and get realigned. Yeah. If you would have told me that I was going to get a call from Jim Rice, I would have said, who the fuck is Jim Rice? And who's Christina Rice? Yeah. And then if you would have told me that Christina was going to become this awesome light in your life, I'd be like, who is that? Yeah. I don't even know Christina Rice. There was no way that I could see it. I just had, luckily, great mentors that are telling me, you're doing the right thing, you're doing the work, you're trusting God, and you're trusting the process. Like, it's going to be okay. And my whole life, I never did that, and that's why I could never fully, like, get over my, like, way of being. Yeah. Because, like, I didn't even, like, you know, like, when I lost all that connection in that time in Mexico, it's like my partying started to go, and I was going ebbing and flowing. And then it just, like, in the last couple of years just got like worse, where I just felt like so empty. And like I had like success, but I just felt like, you know, like I didn't burn my life to the ground. Like I have a successful business. Like when I say a fraction of what I make, like, you know, I was making good money. Yeah. And so it was like, it's not like I wasn't making, like, for most people, a really great income. But for me, it was like with my high overhead, like it was tough. Yeah. But like it was like for me, like, and like I told you, I'm at my friends' like baby showers and shit on the side in the phone. Yeah. Like for me to like put my phone away and being like, business isn't that important. In the back of my mind, I'm like, how am I going to pay my mortgage? Yeah. But I had to trust the process, and I had to trust like this higher power, God source, however you want to identify it. Yeah. It's up to you. I call it God because it's just easier.
Well, I mean, I call it all the things.
Yeah, all the things. I call it source. I love it. Whatever it is, it's the best. But right? Like, is it not? Like, it's the best. I mean, I think some people call it life. People will be like, oh, life's good. Or like, you know, like I think anyone who's like, oh, there's no this or that, and then you believe in karma, it's like you're a hypocrite.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing.
This is the wrong podcast to be like, oh, don't be offended by God. People are like, woo, woo, on the woo train.
I mean,
I love it.
Yeah, we can talk about whatever here. But, I mean, I think I really appreciate you like kind of mapping it out like that, like 1, 2, 3, you know. And to your point, I have found, and I think a lot of people like when you're saying, you know, how can I give to other people when I've got all this stuff in my mind? Like I totally get that. And what I've learned is that's the moment when I need to go into service, and I need to get curious 100%. About other people, because source, God, whatever, does work through other people. Right? Like God worked through Jim Rice that day, right? Like God works through me. God worked through you with me. Like God, source, whatever, works through people, you know? And so I think a lot of times we spend so much time spinning, right? And it's like, that's actually when you do need to go in the other direction. And that for me has changed my life and given me so much clarity, and it keeps the energy flowing, and it keeps me in alignment with receiving, right? Like it helps God keep giving to me. Yeah.
For those who are listening, this motherfucker is spitting. I had this dude, man, and I've had so many, like, look, this dude used to tell me that. He says, God works through people. Mm-hmm. And it was like, he used to tell me that all the time, and he'd always be like, it's the people. It's like God's working, God works through people. It's like, it's like, hey, God, I'm trusting you to take care of my finances. Mr. Rice hits me up. Yeah. Money doesn't rain from the sky, right? I don't look right. Like it just, that's not yet. Maybe one day for me. Yeah. Hey, I'm open to it. You know what? That's what I love that like Thatch would say is like, he's like big. He's the first person who taught me about like manifesting. Yeah. And I'll get back to this story in the timeline. I'm kind of a tangent guy. I apologize. But like,
well, I think I'm going to have you back on to talk about that.
Okay. Well, we can go in a whole different time with manifesting, because I got stories for that too. But, he was the first person to introduce me to that and got on that. And he would talk about it. He's like, yeah, because he's a real estate guy too. He'd be like, yeah, I'm probably going to make my money through real estate, but I'm open. Like I might buy a lottery ticket, because who am I to say? Totally. Like I'm putting it out to the universe. The universe is going to make it happen. Like his whole thing is fuck how. It's like you declare what you want, fuck the how. Yeah. Like the how will show up. right? But like you have to first declare it and like match the vibrational frequency. And like that blew my mind when I first heard it, because it was like hearing it too, like I love what you do, but one thing that's like cool and I've always really appreciated about when you and I get together, and I feel really appreciated by you and Lo, is just being able to, I feel like not a lot of men really like get in and appreciate that, right? Like the kind of like manifestation in the spiritual, because I think in our masculine it's like very logical and like what you can see and what you can do, and like I'm gonna like make this with my hands kind of, do you know what I mean? And really like we thrive in that kind of like the physical and the like reality. And it's like I feel like even with like real estate, when we're working together, it's like you're like, hey, kind of this and nebulous, and I'm like, no, it's like this, right? Like going through. And so I love that you give space for men to explore that, and you also do it in a matter-of-fact way, because I feel like you're I don't know if that's the right way to say it. Sometimes I like your terminology gets me off, but I feel like you're rooted in your masculine, or your masculine is like strong in you, but like you're still very much more like feminine. But it's like you have enough of that where it's like I've never felt like, sometimes I feel like, you know, like if it's like too girly and this and that, it's a little bit like I don't know if this is gonna work for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, a lot more men, you know, I mean, I know a lot of every man I know and I'm close to is like into this world, you know, but I know there's a lot more men that like maybe it would help them to see this side. And the same for me. I'm like, there's so many women who are so like divine feminine. I'm like, you got to cultivate your masculine energy.
Yeah.
Like we all need both, right?
Yeah.
Like we all need both. And that's how we come into balance. And like, that's how we really do cool shit, you know?
Yeah.
And so like, and I think that's why a lot of men do, like they're open to having those conversations with me, because I approach manifestation in this very like, it's energy, it's quantum physics, you know? But I think that a lot more, you know, men need to be hearing from other men about it, you know? So I think that's important. And, you know, the masculine gets inspired, right? But watching people doing it. And so I think that's why it's so powerful for me, just like watching you embody everything that you've learned, you know, and whether or not you believe, you know, some of the phrases I say. It's so funny. Sometimes you're like, yeah, I don't know if I'm skeptical. And I'm like, you literally live by this. You're like, I'm skeptical. And I'm like, this is literally what you do, you know? So whether or not you like the phrasing, you do embody it, and it's really powerful, you know, like, and so I really appreciate that about you, you know?
Thank you.
So, I mean, I could talk to you forever. I want to have you back on. But this has been amazing. And I want you to tell everybody how they can connect more with you.
So first of all, I will be happy to do that. Thanks for having me on. Every time I have a podcast or go on one, I give the person a book, because I love books.
Wow.
So I got this book for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have you ever read that?
Absolutely not.
Have you heard of it?
No.
Oh, you're in for a treat. You're
it
gonna
looks
love
like something I will like.
You'll love it. You will. But yeah, so my name is Michael Sutton. I had the SUTTON Real Estate Group. We're brokered by Keller Williams La Jolla here in San Diego, California. You can reach me. You can find me on the internet. The best way to probably find me and check out my stuff is my Instagram. My handle is @Michael, MICHAEL .Sutton, SUTTON .SD, like San Diego. And yeah, that's
we'll put all that in the show notes and description. And if anybody wants you to sell their house,
if anyone wants me to sell the house,
say that I referred to you.
You know what? If anyone that refers to this episode and you drop the CTC Christina the channel, we'll give you $1,500 off listing your property.
Love it.
Or help you save $1,500 on your closing cost.
Love it.
Any new clients
plus
and that
special
goes,
treatment, right?
Plus, of course, special treatment. Plus, that offer is good through 2024. So if you're listening to this in 2025, I'm sorry. Limited time only.
Amazing. The sales thing doesn't work for you. So authenticity.
Well, I'm not a salesy guy. You know that. I'm not a sales. That's the thing, is people like always are like, oh, like this and that. And I'm like, you know what the best thing I think you said to me when we were talking about business? Because what people might know you for is like being this like spiritual giant, but you are a great businesswoman.
Thank you.
And you've actually given me some really great business advice. And I remember one time I was like getting into this like complicated thing, like, oh, I'm going to start this whole campaign and this. And then you're like, stop. Like, why are you doing all that? Why don't you just market with your energy? And I was like, that's so genius.
Yeah.
You like simplified it and you're like, I don't do all that. Like, you just stop. And I was like, man, I need you as like a business coach. Like,
we'll get there.
We'll get there one day. Yeah.
One day.
But thanks for having me on. It's always a blast.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for being one of the first guests on the show.
Honored, completely honored.
Amazing. Thank you.